I thought my wife was cheating on me. But what I found when I followed her, it was worse than I could ever imagine. It all started with a gut feeling. For months, I had been noticing little things, strange behavior, unexplained absences, and the way she acted when I asked her about her day. At first, I told myself it was nothing. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But then, one evening, I came home from work early to find her acting even stranger than usual. She was glued to her phone, and when she saw me, she quickly shoved it in her purse. My heart sank. I asked her about it, but she gave me a vague answer, something about a work emergency. Something about her tone didn't sit right with me, and that's when I decided enough was enough. I had to find out the truth. The next day, I left work early and followed her as she got in her car. I had to know where she was going. My suspicion had grown into something darker, something I couldn't ignore. I told myself I had to see it through, whatever it was. She drove down a familiar road and then made a turn that was totally out of the ordinary. My heart started pounding in my chest. Where was she going? I followed her for about 20 minutes until she pulled into a quiet, dimly lit street. I parked down the road, hiding behind a building, as she got out of the car. At first, it seemed like she was just going for a walk. But then, she met someone. A man. My stomach twisted as I watched them greet each other with a hug. They laughed, like old friends, something I hadn't seen in a long time between us. They were talking for a while, and then they walked together, toward a house, hand in hand. I felt my chest tighten. This was it. She was cheating. My mind raced with all sorts of questions. Was it someone she worked with? An old friend? Why hadn't she told me about him? I followed them from a distance, trying not to be seen. They entered the house, and I parked across the street, shaking with anger. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. What was she doing? Was this an affair? Hours passed. It was getting late, and I knew I had to confront her. But then, just as I was about to leave, something unexpected happened. My wife came out of the house alone, but instead of getting in her car, she walked toward a side door and knocked. An older woman opened the door. She seemed to recognize my wife instantly, hugging her tightly. They talked for a few minutes, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. My wife handed her an envelope before turning to leave. I was frozen, confused. Who was this woman? I decided to follow her for just a little longer. I needed answers. After a few more minutes of walking, she got in her car and drove off. But not before I noticed something shocking. I saw her take a quick glance at her phone, just like she used to do when she didn't want me to see something. I returned home that night with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. My wife was hiding something from me. What was it? And who was that woman? The next morning, I checked the bank statement. My heart dropped when I saw the withdrawal. $10,000. The same amount that had been taken out about a month ago. I hadn't noticed it before. Was my wife in some kind of trouble? What was this money for? I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't sit on this any longer. I had to know. I confronted her that night. I didn't know how, but I had to get to the bottom of this. The second she walked through the door, I could see the panic in her eyes. "Where were you last night?" I asked, voice shaking. Who was that man? She stood there, frozen. It was the first time I saw her like that, vulnerable. After a long silence, she burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she said, barely able to breathe through her sobs. The truth was more shocking than I could have imagined. The man was a friend of hers, someone she had known for years, but he wasn't just any friend. He was her biological father, someone she had lost contact with when she was a child. The woman I had seen her with was her mother, who had been in hiding from her abusive father for years. She had been paying off his debts secretly. And that's why she was acting so strange. She didn't want me to know how deep in debt they were. She had been carrying this secret, not out of betrayal, but out of love and fear. She was ashamed that I would think poorly of her for helping her family in a time of crisis. It hit me like a ton of bricks. All this time, I thought she was betraying me, but she was protecting me and herself from a painful truth. I could only sit there, stunned by the depth of her sacrifice. I had been so sure of my suspicions. But it turns out that the truth was far more complicated. The next time you think you know someone, think again. You may not always see the whole picture. That's all for today. Follow the channel to see more interesting stories, and I'll be waiting for you on the other social media platforms.